Arlington is going to be crazy, whether it's open bracket or pool play. The competition has never been tighter. I'm going to break it down for you. Yo, what's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Casting. I'm one of the HCS commentators, and we have another HCS weekly report where today we're going to be giving our final thoughts on each and every team leading up into Arlington. And I know a lot of you have been trying to keep up with Rostermania. There's been a lot of changes. We're going to talk about each, like I said, each and every one of these teams, and we're going to break them down for you. So, going to be really fun, a really fun video for you guys. Let's start by talking about FaZe, or FaZe Clan, if you will. You have Frosty, the former MVP, Renegade, the main slayer, World 2, one of the best shots in the game, and then Snakebite, the general, making up this FaZe roster. One of the teams that weren't affected by the Rostermania, which neither one of the teams that were in the top 3 had to make any changes, and no surprise to anybody, they didn't make any change. However, FaZe, we do have a lot to talk about. When I think of FaZe, I think of a unit that is looking to play the game at such a fast pace. Like their default play kind of reminds me similar to Native Red, except with a lot more firepower. FaZe won up the tempo at every given moment. One of the things that make FaZe so tough to play against, like, you know, your objective efficient teams will use their numbers against you. The problem when you go up against FaZe, like an Optic or SSG, who are those objective efficient squads, is you're always playing a man down when you're playing against FaZe. FaZe are usually winning their 1v1s. They're one of the best slaying teams in the league, and it's hard for you to get anything going objectively when you're not on the map. And that's one of the things that make FaZe so tough. And obviously you start that coordination, that teamwork, and the team has that natural chemistry along with that firepower that it comes with. Then when we talk about the narrative surrounding FaZe, they're out of the Elite 3. They're the only team not to drop outside of the top 3 leading up into Dallas. So you had the 4Ks, ultimate 2K leading into Dallas. And then at Dallas, they came out with the win, which obviously they have to be one of the favorites going into Arlington to win the tournament. But that doesn't mean that they weren't tested. We saw teams like Native White. We saw teams like the team formerly known as Hive, now going by G1, take FaZe to a Game 5. We saw SSG take them to a Game 5 in the Winners Bracket Finals. And then we also saw SSG again take them all the way to a Game 7 in that Grand Finals. There's 2 ways you can look at that. You can sit there and look at FaZe and say, oh, well, they have a weaker map pool than say like an SSG. We're going to talk about them soon after this. Or you can kind of spin the narrative and say, well, maybe they're the iciest team in the league. They're always going to Game 5s, always going to elimination games, and they're getting over the hump. No matter what, no matter how you want to look at it, you can't ignore the fact that FaZe literally just won in Dallas, and they're one of the favorites going into Arlington, and I think we all have to respect that. Watch out for FaZe Clan. On the total opposite of the spectrum, total opposite of the fence, if you will, you have Space Station Gaming, Bound, the movement god, Eco, one of the smartest players in the league. I'm not just saying that. Frosty's also said that himself. Penguin, who was at one point known as this objective player, but now is known as like this overall player, because not only does he have this mastery of objective, and on top of that, he can slay as well. They have Stellar, one of the best overall players in the league, and we're starting to see that now when it comes to the 1v1 tournaments. That he really got to show his individual skill and that pure shot. If you need an overall player, you might need a Stellar. And then you have Space Station Gaming as a whole, objective efficient, obviously know how to up the tempo when necessary, but also know how to slow the game down too, which I think Space Station Gaming don't get enough credit for, is their understanding on how to pace the game. Like I talked about how well Space Station Gaming looked leading up into Dallas online, And it just so happens that Penguin and Stellar had both moved to Texas. I don't know if it was temporary. I'm hearing that they're not there anymore, but the moment they moved to Texas, started to get a little bit of that Texas barbecue in them. They started not only showing that they can be an amazing LAN team, but also able to replicate that online, which they were known for so long for being inconsistent and downright bad at times when it came to their online gameplay. Space Station Gaming on the complete opposite of the defensive FaZe. For example, the same teams that took FaZe to a Game 5, which the now G1 and the Native Whites, SSG swept both of those teams in Dallas. Going into the winners bracket finals, Space Station Gaming only had dropped one game in that winners bracket finals. Meanwhile, FaZe had dropped 5 or 6 leading up into the winners bracket finals. And that's why when I saw that matchup, I said, well, SSG are looking clean. There's no way that they lose to them once in the winners bracket finals, and no way they lose to them twice in the grand finals, but obviously we know what happened back in Dallas. Either way, when it comes to the big three, when it was leading up to Dallas, not including Dallas, Space Station Gaming were looking the best, and definitely were looking the cleanest when it comes to map count, but FaZe were still able to ice up in that Game 5 winners bracket finals, and still able to ice up that winners bracket finals and that grand finals Game 7, and FaZe ultimately win Dallas. Let's talk about Optic Gaming. APG, one of the most underrated players in the game, which is crazy because for a team that has won back-to-back lands, you're world champion somehow. APG is still always flying under the radar, even though when you look at all of the advanced stats, you know, he's always up there when it comes to slays, he's always up there with objective time. He literally does whatever the team needs him to do in order to win, and yet he's still disrespected in the formal controller player of the year. I mean, whether it's Call of Duty, Halo, whether it's Apex, or any kind of shooter with foremost fundamentals, with his reticle placement and just pure shot, he's going to be able to put down damage on the map. And then you bring in that communication awareness that he brings into the table. Foremost an invaluable piece, and Optic were able to land him during that first Rostermania all the way back in early season 1, and he's been an invaluable piece since then. And obviously Lucid reigning MVP, enough about that. And Trippy, who definitely one of the more unorthodox players in the league, and really hard to like figure Trippy out. Like he has this really weird gameplay where he's able to speed it up when he's with his teammates, and he's always out there putting in that entry level damage, really making his teammates shine. But then like when he does have teammates around, like he has like this ratty type of play style where you're like, where the frick is Trippy? Bam, back comes in. So really, it's always really fun to watch Trippy's point of view and the way he just views the game and the map, because you can tell he has really good macro level awareness, but nobody, again, it's one of the things that people just don't talk about enough when you're ultimately talking about Trippy. Optic Gaming as a whole, similar to SSG, again, this is my opinion, guys, you guys can differ as far as your opinion, but I think similar with SSG, I think their bread and butter is their teamwork and their objective efficiency, and the fact that they barely have any weak maps within their arsenal. I think that's one of the things that make Optic and SSG so good. The difference between Optic and SSG, though, is that SSG started to step it up right before Dallas. Optic were already struggling before Dallas with a 2 top 6 finishes, which is not Elite 3 type of behavior. And then on top of that, you get swept by Quadrant and pools. You were taken. I think you had to take that same Quadrant to a Game 5 just to beat them out. You were tested multiple times throughout the second half of the season leading up into Dallas, and then you had 2 chances to get over the hump against Space Station Gaming, and both times you were 3-1 by them, not even taking them ultimately to a Game 5. So Optic Gaming definitely they need to figure things out. One thing that I feel like we were noticing with Optic is that and they said they need to figure things out, is I feel like other teams have figured them out. And I wonder if you could attest that to the fact that they were streaming their scrims so consistently. So people were able to watch their scrims, figure out their playstyle, figure out their comms, their strengths, their weaknesses, how they overcome X, Y, and Z. You get so much information by watching a team scrim, especially with their comms and what they're prioritizing and what they're trying to do on the map. And it almost seems like now teams might have figured them out a little. But since then, Optic have taken things seriously. They've experienced a little bit of failure. You know, they've experienced a step back. They've stopped streaming their scrims. They're taking it seriously. I'm even having a hard time tracking some of the scrims. I wonder if they've been scrimming with the Smurf. I'm not even, because there's a few scrims I can't quite pinpoint. I wonder if Optic are hiding, but clearly they're taking things seriously, and I feel like it's really hard to like experience success or really appreciate success until you understand pain. And to back to back, and then to like take like a nosedive, like we've seen again, top six in two out of the three major online tournaments leading up into Dallas. Ultimately, not getting the exact results they wanted to see at Dallas. Now we see Optic struggle, and I think that's going to actually make them stronger going into their own event, because now you're coming in with that big old chip on your shoulder. I think the only thing that makes Optic scary is a angry Optic going into the event. So now you're going in angry with that chip on your shoulder. You're going to want to be making a statement with every single game, every single series, from pool play ultimately to bracket play. While you're making those plays and while you're getting hype, you have the home crowd on your side, because mind you, this is Optic's major that's running it. So you already know a sold out arena is going to be making noise every single kill, every single multi-kill, and every single win. Optic Gaming might have the best opportunity to bounce back and take back their throne literally right after relinquishing the crown, and it's right here in their home turf. And honestly, I think they Native Red or not native dead. Let me tell you, Native Red are not dead. They are alive and kicking. You have Taulik, the main slayer, and also the leader of the group. Soul Snipe, who was at one point known as an objective phenom himself, but has evolved past. I remember doing an interview with Soul Snipe. He talked about wanting to value his life, and now he's one of the harder kills on the map, and he can slay. Let me tell you, some of y'all done forgot that Soul Snipe was a slayer. Manny, the ultimate X Factor. That's not even my words. That's Soul Snipe's word. Manny is the X Factor of the group, and then you're missing that movement god, that speed demon in Druck, and instead you're actually replacing it with Bohm, who would describe himself as more of a back player, but mind you, phenomenal shot. Been there, done that type of player, has been doing that. I remember seeing his name back in Halo 5. It came in, and I talked about him like not even trying to emulate Druck, not even trying to emulate anybody else, but just going in and being himself. And there was times where he was stuffing that stat sheet, topping the leaderboard time and time again. Bohm showed that he's the real deal when his stock flew up. And once again, Druck, who couldn't make it to Charlotte, once again couldn't make it to Dallas, and once again, we're seeing that cannot make it to Arlington, and Bohm is going to be able to come in and show what he's made of again. When it came to Native Red going into Dallas, I'm not gonna lie, I love telling y'all when I'm right, but I got no problem admitting when I'm wrong. And when Native Red went into Dallas with a sub, especially a sub that's so different than their original starting player as far as stylistically, I counted them out. I'm not gonna lie to you. I counted them out. I honestly thought that that Native Red were going to struggle. Yet yet some way, somehow, Native Red, who largely have been known for being inconsistent, have consistently been getting fourth place. No matter what the obstacle is, no matter whether it's Druck or Bohm, apparently, they've been consistently getting fourth place. Talk again, all three of the major online major tournaments leading up into Dallas, fourth place every single time, going into Dallas with a sub, an entirely different player, and still able to get fourth place, upsetting everybody's bracket. Some way, somehow, Native Red find a way to figure it out against everybody else who isn't named Optic, SSG, or FaZe, at least consistently. Going into Arlington, it's gonna be competitive. It's gonna be tough because the same way that Native Red are gunning for that top 4 spot and maybe even further is the same way Native White is, same way Shopify Rebellion is, same way Sentinels is, same way Quadrant is. You can name a good 5 or 6 teams that can legitimately take that top 4 spot, but some way, somehow, Native Red have been doing it, and they're looking to do it again, once again, here at Arlington. Native White! Native White, one of the teams that really took advantage of Rostermania and made a high risk, high reward move. You have Barcode, one of it's not one of the top player from ANZ, was brought over by G2 and eventually brought in here with Native White. You have McWin, former 343 employee, eventually was not able to compete for an entire year. Eventually was able to do so, gets on the roster immediately, and then builds this what would look like a damn good squad, and ended up being so. Top 4 at Charlotte out of open bracket, by the way. And then Tapping Buttons, similar to Barcode, a top, if not the best player out of Latin America, was once brought over to the U.S., to the States, under Evil Geniuses, way back in the day. And then once again poached from Latin America, brought back to the States again, and Tapping Buttons now competing with Native White, but no longer running with Gilkey. Now you have Collect coming in from, who at one point was teaming with Sentinels, then more recently teaming with Complexity. I talk about this a lot because I think it's relevant, especially with this move. I got to interview McWin not too long ago, and it's on the YouTube. Check it out. And McWin talked about wanting to speed up the gameplay, not being afraid to be a slay heavy team, a la a FaZe, for example. And he used this. I talk about this so much because I love it. I freaking do. He's this one line that will always stick with me. He says, "It's tough to be objective efficient when you're dead." I love that line. And when I thought about that, I thought about, well, it makes sense. So the Native Reds, the Optics, the SSGs, the squads that are known for their objective efficiency. What's a hard counter to that? Break the teamwork up. Always keep a player on the black screen. Don't allow them to get into a defensive or even offensive set because they're always playing a man down. Keep the slaying up, keep the speed up, and throw off their momentum and their timing. And that's what Native White ultimately want to do when they brought in Collect from that Complexity roster. You're talking about a player that plays on like a 5.770. He goes in and puts damage, but then stays alive. And whenever he's streaming, he always talks about this. He has this like one motto as his title, and he calls it stick and move. And I think it perfectly describes the player that Collect is. Damage, pull out. damage, pull out. You're always trying to figure out, like, where the hell was Collect? How was he putting that much damage? It's that fast sensitivity and that slick movement that he's able to do. It's almost snake-like with the way that he maneuvers around the map. And that's where Native White want to be, because I think that complements Barcode and Tapping Buns playstyle so well. Native White had they had an abysmal run leading up into Dallas. They placed outside of the top 8 all 3 times out of the 3 major tournaments leading up into Dallas. But then they go to Dallas and something freaking clicks. I don't know what it was. Something clicked. And once again, just like they did at Charlotte, again, proving that online doesn't mean jack, especially when it comes to certain teams such as Native White, because they go in and they 306 Karma, 3-2 Sentinels, 3-1 G1, take FaZe to a game 5, almost beat out Shopify in a game 5 to get top 6 at Dallas. Native White once again is showing that they're a LAN team. And now with Collect and the playstyle meshing a little bit better, I'm excited to see what Native White look like. And I'm excited to answer the question of who they are. Are they capable of top 4 again? Are they a top 6 team? Are they the top 12 in North America, not even including some of the best teams outside of North America, like we saw multiple times before Dallas? Who are Native White? That question will be answered soon. Shopify Rebellion. Shopify, another team that made a big move when Rostermania started. You have Ryan Noob and Rain, longtime duo. Ryan Noob known as the chess master, Rain known as one of those underrated players. Well, when it comes to that communication, teamwork, he's known for that, but people forget that both Rain and Ryan Noob can slay. Don't forget, Ryan Noob was an FFA phenom, and don't forget those times where Rain were topping the leaderboard back with E United. That was even back when both Spartan and Suspector were on the crew. Rain had his games. And then you have Mental, who I've been told is not only one of the best Gears of War players of all time, but I've been told he's the best Gears of War player of all time. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really watch Gears of War. I don't know much about it, but what I do know is that Mental's a been there, done that player. He's done it with Gears of War. He's done it with Call of Duty, and he's been damn good here with Halo. I was preaching his praises back late season 1, when nobody had their eye on a Shopify Rebellion. But when I was watching, I said, "Well, hold on." He had a stint. He filled in with Exet during one of my esports arena events, and I saw it then. I'm like, this dude is slaying out of his mind. Like there's no shot people are not recognizing what Mental did. Like, the dude was slaying out of his mind with a team that he never played with before. And every single time Shopify Rebellion was looking competent, every single time Shopify Rebellion was going toe-to-toe with these teams, you could tell that Mental was just far above the rest. And to me, it wasn't hard to see. And Shopify Rebellion then decide to drop Carmea, then decide to bring in Psycho. And I know a lot of you guys are probably like, who? What? Some of y'all know, but let's be honest. Complexity didn't play exactly the way that we wanted to see them play going into Dallas. But there was one thing that you couldn't deny is the fact that both Psycho and Collect superstars. That like you can tell that these boys are the real deal and will be the real deal for quite some time. I remember back with the first iteration of Complexity, I asked McRin to describe Psycho in one word. He said annoying. He said Psycho's the most annoying player to deal with. He has a nasty shot, and he has this almost Pistola-like gameplay where he picks and chooses positions to make his stance, and it's always the right move. His flanking plays are really good. His ability to stay alive is up there. Like he does everything good. And it's hard to sit there and find a weakness within the game. He understands the game, and then the game at a level that no high schooler should. Like he really does it, and Ryan knew recognized that early. He said once he saw that Rostermania was started, man, Ryan Newman Shopify, they swallowed up Cycle quick, and it's a big move for them, and nothing against Carbea whatsoever. You guys know I'm big on Carbea, but I think again, what the moves that Native White made, the moves that Sentinels made, I'm going to talk about that soon. The move that Shopify Rebellion made has nothing to do with skill. Gilkey was incredible. If you didn't know, you weren't paying attention. Carbea is incredible. If you don't know, you weren't paying attention. What these moves are about is to fit the style that these teams want to play. Cycle fits this team probably a little better than Carbea does. Collect fits this team better than Gilkey does. The Sentinels roster, again, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but their fit plays so well with each other. It's not about, oh, this player is better, this player is better. It's honestly about what is your idea of perfect Halo? What does that look like? And if it doesn't match with the same players you are, then sometimes it gets to the point maybe you're playing two different games on the battlefield, and that ain't helping anybody. Psycho, like I said, young talent, a young superstar in the league, and to be under the likes of Mental Rain and Ryan Noob, like I can only imagine that his growth is going to be immense. Like the amount of knowledge that these three have that they'll be able to share with him, and also him obviously contribute as well to the conversation is honestly incredible. And I think it's going to be great for him, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. Now we talk about Shopify Rebellion as a whole. And the one thing I urge you to do as a viewer, which you're not going to do, because you don't care, like Tony, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I urge you to not, whatever happens, don't look at placing versus placing versus placing. Because I'm not going to lie, Shopify Rebellion got top 6 in both Charlotte and at Dallas. And then you have questions. Then you got to bring up questions like, did you have an easier road? What were the variables to the situation? Like, if you just put it in a vacuum, if they got top 8, which I'm not saying they will, but if they got top 8 at Arlington, and you sat there and said, well, back-to-back top 6s before Cycle comes in, top 8 when Cycle comes in, that you instantly say, oh, well, that's a bad tournament. I don't think top 8 is bad for Shopify Rebellion, in my opinion. I think Native White are damn good. Native Red are damn good. G1 are damn good. Sentinels are good. Quadrant are good. Like, there's only so many spots within the top 6 that somebody's going to get left out. Maybe it's Native White. Maybe it's G1. Maybe it's Shopify. I don't know. But if Shopify Rebellion were to get top 8, I don't want them to be a victim of their own success they've had with back-to-back top 6 finishing. And maybe that's just me. Because I don't think top 8 is bad for them. If they get top 12 or lower, now that to me is a bad tournament, in my opinion. Either way, Shopify Rebellion have showed that they can bang They I think they what are they, did they beat FaZe by like 1 game in scrims? I know I think they tied with Optic 7-7 in scrims as well. So I mean, in practice, talk about practice. In practice, they've been looking good, and you already know Ryan was gonna come with a few tricks up his sleeve going into Arlington. So watch out for Shopify. New G1. I think we did a video. I don't think it posted on YouTube just yet. I don't know if everyone will at this point. But a new G1 is the same roster that was old Hive and old Avengers. So if you recognize some of the names, like I can't quite put my finger on them. It's old Hive back in Dallas, and then Avengers, which they played under every single tournament leading up into Dallas under the Avengers banner. Swish Fives, who I've had the honor of knowing for a very long time. I've grinded with him on LAN. I've had the opportunity to coach him in a couple of squads. And there's one thing that I know is that the man's a grinder and puts in the work. And like, I feel like hard work and preparation in some way, shape, or form will like always lead to success. Like if you put in the work time and time again, you're grinding not only in game but out of game. You know, you're doing the film reviews, you're doing everything that you and your team ultimately need in order to succeed. Eventually, you will succeed. I think Swish is a perfect example of a player that puts in the time, puts in the effort, and has been a bit undervalued in the past, but finally starting to become a household name that he honestly deserves to be at this point. I'll talk about Huss next. I think Huss is another undervalued player. This whole roster is undervalued. Nobody was talking about Huss late season 1. I'm watching him during my esports arena tournaments, and I'm just like, bro, this dude plays like a freaking vet. Like even when he's not stuffing the stat sheet, he's making the plays necessary for his team to win that don't show up on the stats. He's a very unselfish player. He's a very high IQ player. Understands the macro well. And I think that's one trend I noticed with all of these players. I think Swish's awareness is great. I think his understanding of the game is phenomenal, and so is his awareness. Then when you look at Neuronical, Coach McRin will tell you same thing. Play caller has great awareness, understand the map, and when you have 3 players that have that great awareness, have a damn good amount of mechanical skill, they can shoot their guns and put in the time and effort into becoming better. You have a team that's set up for success. And then every time I see Precision, man, the dude is a slayer, bro. I promise you, when the next time you see G1, whether it's Bravo stream, Alpha stream, whatever it is in HCS, watch Precision stats. Watch his watch it when they have him on screen. The dude is a slayer. And it's crazy to me that nobody was talking about any one of these players for so long individually, and even as a team, people are still looking over them. Despite the fact that they've been pretty damn consistent. My only question when it comes to G1 is what happens now that expectations are on. Because I feel like everything's fine and dandy when the lights aren't on you. You know, like when you're that team that's, you know, that people will say, oh, don't get top 16, get top 8. It's like, wow, you know, that's cool. We'd expect to get top 8. We'd expect to get top 6. They're the Avengers. They're a team that didn't even have an org, you know? Team that nobody ever heard of. Who the hell's Huss? Now you're on G1. And although I think your team of grinders and players that are undervalued and overlooked at times, I think represents where gamers first are and their org. One thing that doesn't represent that is not being in the spotlight. You got Kenny Vaccaro as one of the owners. He's a damn former football player. All eyes are going to be on him and his team at all times. You have some of the best content that's being delivered, you know, whether it's Twitter clips or the montage, the announcements and whatnot. When G1 put out a piece of content, all eyes are on it because it's always freaking good as hell. Like so even though you're grinding represents G1, I think perfectly, you're not flying under the radar when you're rocking a gamer's first banner. So now I want to see what your team is truly made of when expectations are on you, when that spotlight is on you now. Now it's no longer you know, that's good for those guys. Now it's more like, hold on, those are the guys that are replacing Boo Boo Doo Boo. Those are the guys that are replacing Falcated. Those are the guys that are replacing Sab and Suspector and Suppress and all the players that were on this G1 roster before. Now you have expectations on you. So now my question is, will you meet them? We getting real today, boys. Oh my gosh. We getting real today. God bless. Anyway, we ain't done though. Sentinels. Freaking Sentinels. When talking about Rostermania when it began, you know, we talked about Native White and Shopify picking up the young talented prospects of Collect and Cycle. Sentinels decided to go a completely different route with where they ended up. You have you know, Spartan, underrated shot, I would say. Like, I feel like people respect Spartan and his decision making and even his slaying ability, but I feel like a lot of people don't atone that to the fact that he has one of the best shots in the league. Usually lower sensitivity, and just barely misses. And one of the things that makes him such a strong player. You have Lethal, who when I got the chance to talk to Royal One, he always talked about Lethal's responsibility of controlling the macro, controlling spawns, if not anchoring the spawns himself, being the one to take over the anchor position, ultimately kill and replace your opponent's anchor, and then controlling it from there. Like, not only having to worry about his own gameplay, but his teammates' gameplay as well. Where are they? How are they playing? How does that affect what he has to do on the map? He was always almost like, I guess, an in-game coach, I guess, at times, if you think about it that way. And then you have Falcated, another main slayer, a guy that can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the league. If you're talking about a player that you need to purely bring firepower and to stuff the stat sheet, Falcated does just that. Been doing it for a while. And then Boo Boo Doo Boo, who I've talked about his overall gameplay not getting enough shine. You know, he was an objective player back at that first iteration of FaZe back in season 1, then became a main slayer during the later stages of G1, back to an objective player towards the early part of 2023, and now here on Sentinels, you know, it's going to be a situation where maybe it's similar to like an APG, you know, where you're going to have to do it all. You know, if the objective is slacking, Boo Boo Doo Boo's not to have to wear it. Hold on, it's slacking. Let me step into that role. If your team starts to suffer when it comes to the slays department, you'll have to recognize that. You have to step into that role. Boo Boo Doo Boo is probably going to be the most important player on the Sentinels roster because of the fact that he can fill many roles, and will have to do that. Maybe different roles throughout an entire series. But I guess, you know, hey, it's Halo. You got to be able to do that. When I talk to a few coaches, I'm not gonna put them on blast. You guys probably know some of the coaches are, and I talked about the Sentinels roster. You know, they have the biggest question marks around this roster because they respect the fact that this team can be the most dangerous team outside of the Elite Three, Optic, Space Station, and FaZe. You recognize that, but they're gonna play a game that's very different than traditional Halo that we've seen. At least that's what the expectations are. When you think of Booba Dooba, Falcon, and Spartan, you think of not the fastest team in the league. Same with Lethal. They're never not going to be the fastest. If anything, they might even have a pace that's similar to like an EU United back in season 1. They want to slow the game down. Because that's what we expect. That was the one thing that multiple coaches have said about this crew is that they could be the most dangerous team outside of the top 3 with this roster move. The question becomes, is it going to work? But whenever we talk about Sentinels, and ultimately, I guess I gotta talk about, Boo Doo and Falcon being half of G1, Lethal and Spartan being half of the original Sentinels going into Dallas. The one thing we can't ignore the fact that both of these teams have been struggling without each other. G1 never hit that ceiling that we thought they could. They showed, I guess, glimpses of it, but nowhere near enough of what that G1 roster could have attained. And kind of say to Lethal and Spartan, like whether it was Collect, Suspector, no matter what it was, they couldn't have that. They couldn't consistently play amazing as well. Like I feel like outside of Optic, they were struggling. They played Optic great, never had the places to show how well they played against Optic. So you can only go up from here. 2 top 12 finishes. I as long as you get top 8, it's a step in the right direction. If you get top 6, that's damn good. If you get top 4, I wouldn't be surprised. We know how good Sentinels can be. I feel like I'm just a little tired of, say, oh, this team has so much talent. These players have so much potential. That was more like, okay, I just want to see it. Like we know. Like now we don't have to question whether the potential is there. We know where your ceiling is at. Now we want to see you reach it. Now we want that ceiling. Now we don't want to know that your ceiling is super high. I want to know your floor is high. Like you can't be the players that have a floor of top 12 and a ceiling of top 4. Eventually, you got to even it out a little bit. Close up that range. That's what I want to see from Sentinels. I bet it's what you guys want to see too. Freaking Quadrant. Oh my god! Like every time I think about Quadrant, I get a big goofy smile. SLG to IGL, Sika and Legend. They've been teaming together for God knows how long. Going back to the Halo 5 days. Just so damn good. And then Chick, who I didn't know too much about until, which I'm sure you guys probably know, the back-to-back overkills that they got on G1 back late in season 1. It was easily one of the best clips that we've seen in Halo Infinite so far. I think it won like play of the year, I believe it did. Quadrant have already tied the best placing out of a European team in a global event already in Dallas. And when I sat down and talked to SLG, he appreciated it. Definitely didn't take it for granted, but he also made it known that they're not just happy with that. They don't want to be the team that's like, okay, they got top 6. I know they're a team that's shooting for championships. They're a team that's looking to upset the hierarchy of teams, the elite 3, and they're a team that they know that they're one of the favorites to be in the top 4 conversation. And if you look at anybody who's outside that top 3, might be the biggest threat to Optic, Space Station Gaming, and FaZe. Quadrant 3-0'd Optic in pools. I'm pretty sure that's when everybody it was steps to. It was funny because I told y'all leading into Dallas. I said, watch out for Quadrant. They don't got no sub coming into this event. They got their full starting lineup. And people said, Tony's just blowing smoke. He's just trying to create some kind of narrative that's not there. And Quadrant were damn good. Sweeping Optic in pools. I think they ended up taking Optic to game 5 again. But this time not beating them out. But they almost knocked Optic into top 6 on their way to a top 4 placing themselves. Did Quadrant. And now we gotta see what you're made of. Can you do it again? Was it a fluke, or are you really those guys? Are you really legitimately contending for top 4 every single event? Is top 6 now your floor? Could you upset one of the 3 best teams in the world? We'll find out soon. Navi might. It's funny. I feel like Navi probably like combined probably have almost like double the age of like Quadrant, and somehow they still feel like younger brothers within the European scene. Like Quadrant are, in my opinion, I'll probably say in everybody's opinion, the undisputed #1 team in Europe. And it's so funny that like Navi flies so far under the radar, but they're a lot better than people think. And they like slightly remind you every single event, but still they just don't have the placings, don't have the big win to put them back on the map. It seems like Navi are always missing something. You can't quite put your finger on it every single event, but Navi are a lot better than people think. Snakebite and FaZe are always complimenting their game style and their understanding of the game. Jimbo and Snipe Drone are freaking studs. Mighty is this young phenom that seemingly come out of nowhere and is one of the better players in Europe. I got to find out the hard way when I matched him in matchmaking a few times. Let me tell you, he's damn good. And obviously Snakey been there, done that type of player. They just, like I said, maybe it's because they always get like a really tough pool for whatever reason. Maybe that's I don't know, but something always seemingly is missing within this Navi squad event after event. But I promise you, they're a lot better than people think. And so we're 6 Karma. 6 Karma might be the new kids on the block when it comes to Latin America since Tappy Buns was stolen from the country and brought over to the States. They've been fighting with Luminosity, and so I think Luminosity was supposed to be in pool play, but because Magical for some reason can't make it to the tournament, it caused them to have to play through open bracket with the sub, and now 6 Karma are going to be taking their place, which 6 Karma were already in pool play back in Dallas. We got the chance to learn a little bit more, to see them a little bit more. I remember back in Charlotte, they played an open bracket, and I think they were like 1 round away. They played against Proton Gaming even to the game 5. But eventually Proton Gaming beat them out on their way to make it into pool play. 6 Karma just barely missing out. But I've been watching Lore, Strikey, and Stepstars all the way since Halo 5. Essence sounds a bit familiar as well, but they've always been really good. And I would say like back during the esports arena, early esports arena days, you had Native Red, who were like, who were top dogs week after week. You had what eventually was Luminosity, who were kind of like 1A. They would sometimes get Native Red off guard a little back, but then you had what now was 6 Karma, and they were always competitive with the 3. And then Bittersweet coming out of ANZ, which I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know much about the crew, which is funny because I feel like I've always matched against Ningestics and Divinity. I feel like I always match them in matchmaking, and they're the team I know the least of, besides the fact that Scrim Meister's a mouse and keyboard player, the only mouse and keyboard player that's going to be in pool play, which, well, unless somebody makes it, a miraculous run out of open to join them, but the only mouse and keyboard player that's guaranteed to make it into pool play is Scrim Meister Bittersweet, and that's amazing in itself, if you ask me. I think Bittersweet and 6 Karma are gonna have a tough time. The competition just keeps getting tougher and tougher. Every team continues to get better. Native White got better. Shopify Rebellion got better. Sentinels, might have gotten better. We still got to see how that goes. Quadrant is still nasty. The top 3 are still the same. G1 have been consistently great. It's gonna be Davi, 6 Karma, and Bittersweet are going to be tested. It's gonna be tough, but gonna be excited to watch either way. And yeah, that's your HCS report, guys. A little bit of a long one, much longer than I thought we were gonna go. Almost an hour long here did we go, and but I will say, really exciting. This is my final thoughts about every single one of these teams post Rostermania leading up into Arlington. And if you agree, disagree, you got something to say, let me know in the comments down below. I want to hear what you guys think. Maybe you think I'm crazy, maybe you think I'm spot on. Let me know. And yeah, subscribe, like, and comment. Anything to help the algorithm get pushed to more viewers and make me more money. Peace out, guys.